to you from Long Beach, California, this is GovLove, a podcast about local government, brought to you by engaging local government leaders. I'm Meredith Reynolds, Deputy City Manager at the City of Long Beach, and your GovLove host for this episode. GovLove is produced by ELGO, Engaging Local Government Leaders. You can support GovLove by becoming an ELGO member. ELGL is a national volunteer-run, membership-based nonprofit organization with a mission to engage the brightest minds in local government. Check us out and learn more about our $50 annual membership at elgl.org. Also this year, we are celebrating 10 years of the GovLove podcast. Help us commemorate this important milestone by calling the GovLove hotline at 720-282-1752. Leave us a message with your favorite GovLove memories or your predictions on the next 10 years of local government. You just might be featured on a future episode of GovLove. And now, on with our show. Today's guests are Emma Roniger and Jill Parsons, local government grad students, interns, and Gen Z local govies. Emma serves as a management intern for the League of Kansas Municipalities in Topeka, Kansas. Born and raised in Kansas, Emma is an Ethan Allen, Judith Moore Keene, and Wilden Family Scholar at the University of Kansas, pursuing her master's in public administration through the City County Management Fellowship. She previously graduated magna cum laude from Wichita State University with a bachelor's of liberal arts in political science and 2 minors in management and honors in law and public policy. Emma fell in love with public service in college and dreams of becoming a city manager in the future. Jill Parsons serves as a management intern with the City of Leawood, Kansas. Jill is an Ethan Allen, Mark Keene, and Rachel Hunt Bremen Memorial Scholar, pursuing her master's in public administration at the University of Kansas through the City County Management Fellowship. Jill previously graduated from the University of Kansas with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a minor in Spanish. Jill's passion for public service took shape through her role as a student senator, where she worked to amplify student voices, advocate for campus improvements, and represent her peers at the state level. These are some impressive local govies, up-and-comers. Let's welcome Emma and Jill to GovLove. Thanks for joining me, ladies.
Thank you so much for having us.
This is going to be fun. I'm excited. All right, let's do our lightning round. So this is for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. So Jill, we'll start with you. What's one fun fact about you?
One fun fact is I speak Spanish fluently, and I have a really high Duolingo score.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Have to have one of our listeners play you, someone to beat. Yeah. Love it. Emma, what about you? What's one fun fact about you?
Yeah, really embarrassing for me because my Duolingo has just contacted me that I missed 19 days in a row. So we're gonna go past that. But I really love baking. I know Jill can vouch for me, but I bake for the class sometimes, and I bring my treats in. So
okay,
wonderful baker.
I'm jealous, and now I'm hungry.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about Gen Z in the workforce today. So I'm going to ask you some lightning round Gen Z questions. So Emma, what is your Gen Z superpower?
I think it's humor. I try to joke as much as I can, but also keep it serious. But I think when things are lighthearted, it's just so good.
Awesome. Jill, what about you? What's your superpower?
Mine would be kindness. I always try to really help others and just give love where I can.
Love it. Love it. All right. So what is one Gen Z slang that other generations can relate to? Jill, what about you?
When I was looking kind of what I wanted to say about this, I said vibes. Just because okay. I think that when we think about being, Gen Z, we really think about the aesthetics and kind of the vibes of everything.
Love it. Vibes. All right, Emma, what about you?
I said slay. I know that for me, okay. To my boss have said slay multiple times, and I have to catch myself walking back to my office that was so embarrassing. But she loves it, and she's it reminds me of my kids at home. So I'm I'm just gonna keep saying slay. It's just a universal word.
I love it. All right. Last lightning round question. What is one thing you admire about millennials in the local government workplace? Asking for a friend. Just think. Emma, what about you?
I put that they're very funny. I think that they get along with Gen Z so well just because I feel we both are still similar in age enough to get each other's jokes, and I eat it up every time.
Love it. Jill, what about you?
I said that they're trailblazers and they create conversations. I appreciate how much they've sparked conversation for our generation and their generation.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the peek into Gen Z. I appreciate it. We'll start with some of our more serious questions now. Let's kind of go back, for you all, and let's talk a little bit about your public service origin story. So, what lit your fire and helped you find your way to public service and local government? Emma, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people in undergrad that are doing political science, I think law school is kind of that track that people usually go on. And that was my track, I think, till about sophomore year of undergrad. And I just kind of hit a point where I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And, you hear the advice. It's like, if you're not 100% sure, don't. And so, I'm kind of doing the research. What should I do with the political science degree, And I stumbled upon city management. And I was like, don't even know where to start on that. And so I did my research and I was like, wow, this seems like something I would love. And so I ended up emailing the city manager of Wichita, who at the time was Robert Layton. He just recently retired. And I asked to shadow him and I got to sit on a city council meeting. And I was like, this is so much fun, which I don't think everyone would say that, but I love the public comment. No, I like the public comment. I was just like, this is so fun. And like that really lit my spark for like community engagement and really just getting the community involved. And I ended up doing research and finding out that KU was number one. So I was like, it all worked perfectly. All the stars aligned and here we are.
Yeah. Awesome. So Jill, did you also get sparked by public comment at a council meeting?
See, I can't relate on that, but I will say that I was kind of similar with Emma in the sense that I was going to go to law school. I was a junior, just took the LSAT, and I was like, you know what, that was rough. What can I do now? And so I was really close with the honors college at KU, and during my time I still am in contact with two wonderful mentors there. And one of them said, you really value community. Have you ever thought about maybe looking at local government? And at first I was like, what are you talking about? But as I kind of did research and, kind of looked more at KU's programs and whatnot, I realized that I really did find kind of a sense of community within my own local government. And, growing up, I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas, and kind of knew what was going on around where I've been living. And this just really sparked my interest. And so I applied and I got into the master's program.
Nice. Well, KU has an incredible program. Turns out a lot of folks in local government, a lot of city managers. As you were looking to their programs, what drew you to their master's? And are there some highlights of your graduate school experience now that you're in it that's preparing you for your local government career? What about you, Jill?
Absolutely. I think that one thing that we're very blessed about with our local government program is kind of how small our cohort class is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've become really good friends, and I can attest that I always call Emma whenever I need something or I have a question.
We have a group chat.
Yes.
I love it.
And then also the professors. We have a wonderful professor right now as his name is Dr. Nakamura, and he's also a wonderful resource. So the professors and the community is definitely what stood out to me when I was doing my research.
Awesome. Shout out to Dr. Nakamura.
Yes.
Big shout out. He's absolutely amazing.
Huge shout out.
Huge. The biggest of shout outs.
Emma, what about you?
Yeah, I had lived in Wichita my whole life. I was kind of ready to get a change of pace and a change of scenery, and KU is ranked number 1 for local government management, so it was kind of a no-brainer. I was like, absolutely, I'm going to go to KU. And like Jill said, I've met some of the most amazing people, and we've all gotten really close, and our cohort's only 9, so it's a very small group, and we all get along really well. And yeah, the faculty, and also I'm going to give a shout out to the KU alumni, the Kusamats. Mm-hmm. They have all been absolutely wonderful and so welcoming to all of us. And it's really made it super, super exciting.
Awesome. As you're going through your graduate school experience, what are some of the things that have stood out to you that feel like it's really preparing you for your next job?
I definitely would say the conversations. Also the experiences of working for the City of Leawood, they've allowed me to really dive into all departments and learn what I do like, what I don't like. And I feel like that hands-on learning experience has allowed me to really recognize my love for local government, but also kind of find passions within each department. So like finance or human resources, and utilize those specific people to ask questions and really get a hands-on experience.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know that during the ICMA conference in Florida, we were given the opportunity to kind of interview two Kusamats and kind of get a feel. And I know that for me, I was kind of asking, I wouldn't say weird questions, but I think one of my favorite questions that I asked that I ended up telling one of our professors was, how do you get used to not being liked? Because I think like as a younger person, it's kind of our goal to be liked. And I feel like we kind of reach for that. And they had great insights. And it's like kind of getting to the more human side of the career, because we have all these professional development classes that we go to and we work through, but sometimes I forget that, we're humans too. And you kind of have to ask those hard questions that maybe people don't want to ask, but we've been given the allowance to kind of have that safe space to ask those questions. So that's been super amazing for all of us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I come from an organization that has about 6,000 employees, so we're large.
Wow.
And I tell, when I'm speaking with folks who are joining our city in, new employee orientation or something, and I tell them, there's 6,000 employees here. Someone's bound to like you. So go find your people.
I love that.
And I feel that that's true regardless if it's 6,000 employees or, 50, right? That there's always going to be somebody out there that is in your corner, that's part of your coalition of the willing, that's going to stop what they're doing to help you, that's going to chat with you, open doors for you, speak your name in the rooms you're not in, stuff like that. So I think, balancing not being liked perhaps with, some of those things, local government is where it's at for, finding your work friends. So
I love that. Yeah. Definitely a big nerve. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I've gotten over it slowly. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. Sometimes you have to make the hard decisions. So it's something I'm working on.
Yeah. Or the Parks and Rec reference of Leslie Knope, right? They're carrying at you loudly.
I love Parks and Rec. Actually, Jill got me on Parks and Rec, and I love to watch it because now that I'm in it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so realistic to what we do. Really? I love it. It makes me laugh.
Yes, as you should, Jill. Nice work.
Yeah, thank you.
So both of you are serving in some local government internships, right? So in your current roles, tell me a little bit about maybe some of the assignments or projects you're working on and what has really led to some of those key learning moments for you.
So with the City of Leawood, I've done an abundant amount of different projects. I will say that the two projects that immediately came to my head when you were asking the question was I recently, as of Monday, I presented at the city council meeting to get permanent lighting for our buildings, especially with World Cup coming to Kansas City, which is huge.
That's right. Yeah.
And kind of being able to, brand ourselves, but also highlight wonderful months. So purple for the Women's Month, and trying to just make sure that the City of Leawood is using our brand and showing kind of our love. And so that was a really great project. I got to work with a multitude of different departments, from finance to parks, making sure it was in code, and then codes as well. Another project I got to work on, which was really neat, was a grant project. So the police department at the City of Leawood, we utilize Teslas, and so we need a lot of different ways to charge the Teslas. So I was able to get a $65,000 grant for the City of Leawood, which was huge.
Very nice.
And so with all of these projects, I'm learning so much, but also I'm learning how important communication is, and being able to, converse and ask questions, because if you don't understand something, most likely someone else isn't understanding, and asking those questions is so important.
I love that.
Emma, what about you?
What kind of started all of this is my article. I got to write an article about Gen Z in government and then host a panel on it. So those have been some of the more exciting things, because, you kind of sit and you're like, I didn't think that I was capable of that. And then you do it and you're like, I feel so much purpose. And I also get to help with a lot of our professional development courses. And so getting to sit through those has been super exciting. I didn't do a lot of that in undergrad, except for at my internship for my senior year. And so getting more experience in that has been super helpful. And I also get to help with the legislative team at the league, which has been super fun, because I know in undergrad I didn't work a lot with state politics. I would focus on federal, or even just the whole world, I never really focused on state politics. And so getting that experience has been really awesome. And I, get to kind of see the inside look of what legislation is and how it's going to impact cities. And it's been really super exciting.
All right, so Emma, you recently wrote a piece for Management Magazine. This is a really great article that I read. Generation Z in local government: who they are and how to engage. And this is really about how the younger generation entering the workforce is critical to local government's future. So, can you tell me a little bit more about what compelled you to write that article?
Yeah, it started as an assignment at my internship, and I think Anna, who is a Kusama as well, saw it and picked it up, and so it's kind of been snowballed from there. But I wrote it just to kind of introduce Gen Z into the workforce. I think we've slowly seen them start coming in, but I know for me personally, like sometimes being the youngest in the room is a bit nerve-wracking, and I think our communication styles are just completely different, and it's important to kind of get that cohesiveness, I guess is the word I would use, because I know like for me and Jill, I use social media all the time, and I think that that's such a pivotal way to engage the younger generations in local government. You know,
Sure.
I would love to see a silly TikTok of a city manager doing something. You know, I feel like it kind of humanizes them in a way, you know, not kind of in that higher up ranking. And so I was really excited to write it because it was something that I always think of, but I had never like put on paper. And I don't know if Jill wants to add anything, but I know that she's read through it a couple of times. So
I thought
Yeah,
it
Jill,
was so well
did
done.
you did the editing behind the scenes?
yeah.
No, I did not. I can't imagine doing the editing, but that was such a well done paper. And I think kind of what to, Emma just said, I'd love to see a TikTok about kind of a daily life of a local government or in local government, or even just like a sticker to explain exactly what local government means. I think it's huge to just to really be able to kind of get it in like a small cap shot, which I thought Emma did a wonderful job of explaining in her article.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I truly believe that local government can be fun. And
yes.
when I get fully into my career, you know, believe that I'm going to make it a hoot and a half.
Yeah, I often talk in our organization about when we do gatherings or events or things about whimsy, and we need a little bit of whimsy in our life.
I love that word.
I
I
love that.
love
Yes.
that. We all need a little whimsy, a little sparkle. There's no shame in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and in those spaces, when you have a little bit of fun, people are often, kind of leaning in with their whole selves. There's some, aspect of authenticity. You get to feel like others just that much better. And I also think that that's really relatable, right? So part of what I think about and what sparked for me, some thoughts about the article was about, there's you kind of mentioned it before, the question that you asked your alum Emma about, how do you get over not being liked, right? Like this work can be really hard and it's very public. But at the same time, you want the next generation to step into these roles and sort of be the people who are coming after you. But when you're watching that on, at a council meeting, or you're watching it on TV, or you're seeing how the public is treating people in this space, it's really hard to be like, gosh, can't wait to do that. Right. And so, this aspect of cultivating the next generation and making spaces for them and being able to have the opportunity for learning and risk taking and all of those sorts of things are kind of went through my head as I was reading this article. So I, really, really excited to kind of see that in Public Management Magazine, but written by, someone who is sort of in the middle of it was also very cool, because there's a lot of times where there's, oh, well, let me tell you about Gen Z, and it's from somebody from a different generation. It's like, no, I actually want to hear from Gen Z. Like, can you all just tell me what you're thinking? Right. That's the cool part.
I also want to add, I think that especially with Emma's article, it's nice to have a seat at the table and be able to make references and comments and add our own story. Especially since, we haven't always had a seat at the table. So now with, us rising up and becoming more important and needed in local government, it's really important to be able to have those conversations and be able to utilize our voices.
Yeah.
And
That's been the long-standing thing, right? Is getting the seat at the table for anyone who is not there, right? And being having that aspect of inclusivity. Emma, go ahead.
Yeah, and I love the term imposter syndrome because I feel like a lot of us,
Yeah.
at least in our class, we talk about it a lot. And I know I mentioned to both Jill and to our other classmate Leah that it's like it still sometimes surprises me that I'm in this situation and like I'm old enough to start getting into these positions. And we talk with people at ICMA and they were like, "Oh, it's normal. Like you'll feel that for your entire life." And so it kind of gives us like that small connection to other generations of like that feeling is mutual and that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
feel that all the time. And so not to worry about it, you know, and that you belong in these spaces and that you've worked hard to be in these spaces. So that's something that I would like to highlight, you know, imposter syndrome happens to everybody.
Yeah, that is a human feeling that is not attributable to any one particular generation. And yes, I can attest, it does not go away. It gets quieter, right? It's still there, and it's biological in some way, right? Like in the sense that it is meant to give you a signal. It's meant to tell you something. It's meant for you to listen, and it's meant for you to learn something from that feeling. But the power is in managing it so it doesn't become overwhelming. It doesn't allow you, you're not in a place where it allows you to not move forward, right? And so that's really the thing that you learn and you begin to master, hopefully a little bit as you grow up, is that it never goes away, but it becomes more of a tool and less of a barrier.
I love that.
Wow, I really enjoyed that. I really like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about other generations because that's kind of fun. Every generation has judged the ones who come after them. I feel like that's just the thing that happens, right? So
Yeah.
every generation has its tropes and its stereotypes associated with them. What has been your experience of how your generation, Gen Z, has been captured, and what's the biggest myth local governments have about the Gen Z generation?
I love this question.
No,
When
me
I was
too.
thinking, I was really trying to dive into this because, like every generation, Gen Z has definitely been labeled with certain stereotypes. And so I think one being that we're definitely dependent on technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was realizing that, technology is a huge part of how we grew up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that when I was in kindergarten, the first iPhone, or not the first iPhone, but the iPhone, that was a
Yeah.
huge thing.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
iPhone was just, my sister and I shared one, and it was huge for us.
Yeah.
And so I think that with just kind of debunking that myth of all we want to utilize is technology and like ChatGPT, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's just we've been exposed to it our entire lives. And so it's kind of hard to, pivot and whatnot. But I think another thing I kind of wanted to mention with this response was from my experience, there's a lot of individuals, younger individuals, Gen Zs, who want to, shape their community and be involved. And as we just said, have a seat at the table. And I think that's one thing I think people really do want to get involved. So when I did read Emma's article, I was impressed because I know that, without having a voice, it's important to have a voice. And so being able to say, I don't think that's true. We want to have a seat at the table is just huge for us. And I know Emma can speak more about different stereotypes, but definitely technology.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that like our technology is our voice. You know, if you go to TikTok, Instagram, I was going to say Facebook, but I think I might just be the only one that uses Facebook still.
No.
No.
I love Facebook. I go through my nightly scrolls on Facebook Marketplace. I love Facebook. But I think that we do use it. I mean, TikTok in particular, like that is our voice. And, if you want an opinion from a Gen Z, like Google or look up what you're wanting to look about on TikTok and you'll find hundreds of responses. And I think that that's so beautiful that we can still come together. And like Jill said, we've only been raised on technology. And so for us, it's like, this is normal for us. And another word I would like to kind of speak on is the word lazy. I think that we can be called lazy quite a bit. And I think that could also be in connection with using technology because we do have resources at our fingertips and we've used that for, our gain because we've only ever seen technology. So it's kind of hard to not use it. And that, I mean, I think maybe the older generations, they haven't like had as much technology and aren't like as equipped to use it. And so I think that it's been super important for, I think, our growth as a younger generation is to like I had an iPod in middle school, and I had my little Minion phone case, and I thought I was the coolest kid on the block, you know? And so I think technology has been super pivotal for all of our growth.
It's funny that you mentioned the Minion case, because I had early in my career, we would take our USB devices, right, that had our files on it, and we would walk it to the printer, and we'd plug it in, and you'd print off of that. And I always left mine in the printer. So everyone's like, oh, Meredith, this must be yours, right? So finally I got a USB that looked like a Minion. So when I left it in the printer, they knew it was mine and they could return it to me. It wasn't just some like generic USB.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I had a huge Minion phase when I was a kid. I think one year my birthday cake, I made like cut the Twinkies in half, and you put
Nice.
like a little eye, and I thought I did it
Yes.
all by myself, and I thought I was the coolest kid. I was like, Mom, post this on Facebook. I want everyone to see my artwork.
I love it.
So.
I love it. Well, and when you think about, you know, some of these terms like lazy, or, you know, what we heard from millennials was entitled, right? So there's these terms out there. They can kind of take on a life of their own. But there's a flip side to that, right? So one of the previous ICMA conferences, there was a speaker who talked about generational differences, and from a data driven kind of standpoint. And, you know, one of the concepts about lazy was that, you know, the younger generation doesn't want to work overtime. And the speaker said, well, no kidding, because the formulas for retirement are such that they won't be able to earn retirement until they're well into their 60s. They're thinking, hey, I have to work the rest of my life. I want a life outside of work. I don't want to work overtime. And that was like mind blowing for me, right? Because I am under an older formula. I can still retire in my 50s. I could have a whole second career at that point if I want to. And, you know, just the difference in experience and how people think about that, there's always a flip side to that. Same thing for, you know, being entitled. You know, there are aspects of, you know, different generations around entitlement, and the flip side to that is, why is it bad to have boundaries? Why is it bad to know what you want? Why is it bad to feel like you should be able to get it if you work hard enough, right? So there's those kinds of flips to all of the stereotypes and tropes that come from generations. So I think it's a very slippery slope, but it's also, you know, an opportunity to think about, like, why would that be the case? What's the other side of lazy? What does that actually look like? What's the other side of entitled? What does that actually look like, right? Yeah. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing that happens from generation to generation, probably from the beginning of time.
No, absolutely.
And with every generation comes new technology. So it's like this generation, it was like, oh, it's just, it could go into such a deep conversation about the evolution of technology and how it's impacted history, but we don't have time for that.
Yeah. Well, in the article, Emma, you cover a number of responses to a survey. And the survey asked, why do you think Gen Z isn't getting into local government? What's really holding them back? What are some of the most notable responses you received? What sort of things stood out when people shared their answers with you?
I loved going through the responses, because I think it kind of reiterated what I thought, is that I think it's really polarizing, local government. I think that we've lost the human side of government, and I think it's kind of become like a playground for just anger. And it's kind of hard to like you mentioned earlier, like sitting in council meetings and just getting berated. Like no one wants to go through that. And and I think that's why, like, I wrote the article, was because Gen Z, we are kind and empathetic and care. And, there's only so much one person can take until it's like, I'm not happy. And I think that we really prioritize our happiness and our mental health. And I find that incredibly beautiful, because these conversations weren't happening 30, 40 years ago. And so I think people reiterating that it's kind of a scary place to be right now was something that really just hit home with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I wonder how that, because there's Gen Z working in local government. There's also Gen Z who are in kind of quote unquote the public, right? Yeah. So are we going to see a change in decorum, perhaps, if empathetic, kind individuals are now, those are the folks who are coming right to public comment, or those are the folks who are coming to community events? And I'm kind of curious about that. I wonder what aspect would change the behavior of the general public and if any of the attributes of the next generation will show up in those spaces as well. Kind of a curious thing to
I
think
think
about.
that's a great question. And I also
Yeah.
think kind of, those spaces, what are those spaces going to be? Are they obviously, the general public meeting and having the decorum in person, but it's also the decorum online and figuring out that, where is the limitation of what you can say on the internet and say about people on the internet, as well as your local government, what is happening on the internet. I think that'll be a really interesting way to see just kind of our future and how things will align with that response as well.
It'll definitely be an interesting next 15 to 20 years to kind of see how that shift happens. And I'm quite excited. It should be interesting. It's going to be a good PhD like research study.
Oh, for sure. You're already thinking about it.
Yep. So when you both go back to your PhDs, right?
Yeah.
This will be your study question.
You guys see me in 10 years as doctor, you guys will know what happened.
There we go. But there was a phrase in the article that said, Gen Z isn't in government for public recognition, but for impact. And that really resonated with me and feels perhaps a bit universal for many of us from past generations that entered local government from that place of service and giving and, making a difference and leaving a place better than you found it. How might this quest for impact through local government public service be different for Gen Z? Or perhaps there's overlap, right? Or alignment with other generations working in government. What do you think?
I find that public service is probably one of the most beautiful careers you can go into because I think it's just divinely selfless. You don't get into the career to be the top dog, at the end of the day, like we're serving the public, they're not serving us. And so I think there's going to be a lot of overlap throughout these next maybe couple decades on coming back to the fact that we are all here for the same reason, and we don't really need to have those trivial conversations of, well, you do this wrong when you do this wrong, because I think that communication and teamwork is going to become so prevalent and important just to the whole scheme of things. And I don't know if Jill wants to also speak on, kind of coming together as a group, because Jill has the best comments on everything, and I just applaud her. Nice. She is so beautifully spoken.
That is so kind.
You two are so sweet.
I kind of reading the quote that was put, I really do think that it'll be interesting to see how, kind of like as Emma just said, with 15 to 20 years from now, how we honor those previous generations and also how we continue those initiatives. So like immediately my first thought was kind of, how are we going to continue, to some people that I know currently, council members, parks are huge, and making and maintaining communities and being able to utilize spaces where everybody can come together. And the way I think about it is 15 years from now, how are we going to be able to honor those people and honor those initiatives that were started? And I really do think it'll be interesting to see how the legacy continues generationally. I'm excited to see it as well. And I'm excited to also be able to work with that. And kind of as Emma just said, public service is definitely the most selfless thing and act you can do. And I'm excited to see people that are really wanting to help people be in this position. So I think it'll be a great thing to see in the next 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, I think in this space, there's the opportunity to capitalize on how we bring people together. And then also organizations can still find ways to honor the lived experience and the motivation, right, of each generation that comes in. And what no better place than local government because of this thing that ties us all together about this call for service. And so, as you talk about, this is such a beautiful profession and that sort of thing, that's an aspect of what makes it special and meaningful. And I think if every new generation coming into their own and thinking about what they want to do for a career can kind of see that in local government and the value that one generation gets from the other in that space, that is also something that can really, attract or motivate kind of that next generation to step into this work.
For sure.
And I also think it's important to note that each generation has like a different subject they're going to, and I think our generation is very into the once again, like the mental health and like building those open spaces, building those parks.
Yes.
putting community in the community, you know, not just like necessarily, I guess everything's important. Like
Sure.
new roads are important, you know, adding bike lanes, because that's also important to us, you know, making cities more walkable. I think those are kind of things that Gen Z really focuses on. I know that I love a walkable city, and every time I go on vacation and I see a walkable city, I get so excited because I'm like, I can get on a bike and I can go. And because I don't know about anybody else, but I just don't like driving. It's not my
Girl,
favorite thing.
same.
And like the curbs get me, I don't get the curbs. Like we don't have to tell like it's just as scary. And I love to ride a bike, and I think it's so beautiful that you can kind of see the different generations, you know, as we've grown into a city, you can kind of see this was important to them and it's still important now. How can we build to make that better?
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm also going to plug my TikTok. My favorite quote I've ever seen on TikTok was,
Yes.
be a villager in a village. And I think that is huge. And I think I'm excited to see how people start interacting within their communities to help and better, just better assess what they want in their community and how they can get that.
Yeah.
Like, let's
That's
go
a
outside.
very
Let's do super
wise
fun
quote.
things. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Well, and for our listeners, we were chit-chatting a little bit before about them being able to travel to the ICMA conference, which is in Long Beach, here in 2026 in October. And here you can walk, you can bike. We'll get you on a bike share bike. It'll be a lot of fun.
Please.
It'll be a lot of fun when you're able to come and check it out. Get another city experience under your belt.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, in one of the things also in the article, it was talked about meeting Gen Z at their level. So I'm a millennial local government manager and executive, right? So how do I go about doing this, and what are a few specific examples, perhaps, of what this looks like in the workplace? So, like, if you worked for me, what would you want me to do to meet you at your level?
See, and I also love this question because I think currently one way for someone who maybe is a different generation than me, how they could meet me, is having conversation. I think that the people that are my mentors currently, the best thing that they've done for me is setting those coffee dates, setting those times for me to just speak and ask questions, because I in how many years from now I want to be able to not have to ask those questions and feel confident enough in myself, and also confident enough in what I've learned to be able to make those decisions. So it's really just kind of meeting me at just answering my questions. I think another way is definitely online, being able to kind of correspond. And I think that a lot of cities are doing wonderful jobs right now with building their online presence, which I think is something very new. And I really like that. But I definitely think meeting the Gen Zs in person and answering their questions is definitely a way that I personally could be met.
Awesome.
I was going to agree with Jill. I think social media, I know I keep mentioning social media, but I think it is such a strong tool that, I mean, like Jill mentioned, is being utilized by cities. I know there's a couple cities in Northeast Kansas have been using social media, and it's honestly like they come up on my TikTok For You page and I find myself laughing at it, and I'm like, and when you see that, it's like, oh my gosh, like I could work there. Like that'd be so much fun. And so I think it kind of also, like I mentioned earlier, it's like brings the human side of government out. You know, you're not seeing them sitting high up at like in a city council meeting using that very professional language. You kind of see them, you know, a little bit relaxed, you know, maybe in their more casual clothes in the office. And I think that that is super, super exciting. And I love watching those videos personally. And I would love to be one that was creating those videos and making government like seem fun, because it is fun.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, having that aspect of, kind of relatability and being human is certainly definitely in my wheelhouse, and something that there's some really special folks in local government across the country who are doing that. And yeah, you get that sense of like, oh, I bet they're neat. I bet their organization's cool. I bet they have some cool things going on in their city, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just watching a video recently about it was a video of a city close to where Emma and I are located, and someone was filling a pothole, and I just thought it was the coolest video because it really shows like a real experience. And local government is where rubber hits the road. So I truly love seeing that video, and it helped me understand how important it is to get, the potholes filled.
I completely agree. I love those videos where it's like, or sometimes they'll tell like a fun fact while they do it. Like, this street has been here since this year and it's seen all these things. I think that there are so many ways where you can make it seem like, oh, this is my community and I love this community. And I love those pothole videos, and they're also just satisfying to watch. So
like pouring concrete is very zen. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
And the scraping noise, don't like. I love it.
We're gonna need to put together like the whole list of TikToks that our listeners need to check out after this episode.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, I probably spend too much time on TikTok, and that's probably my big downfall. But sometimes I see fun like little city videos, and also people in the community who like, I'm traveling to this city for the day. Here's all the fun things that I did. I find those videos super exciting, and I feel like local governments could really utilize that. Like, what's a fun day in, I guess, Lawrence, Kansas, since that's where I am. But and it's just, there's so many opportunities.
Yeah. Well, let's think a little bit about kind of the larger like policy implications. So if you could implement one policy or program nationwide to boost Gen Z participation in local government, what would it be and why?
Yeah, so at the League, I've also had a lot of opportunities to research civic education. And I think a lot of education, like I know for me when I was in high school, I didn't really focus on any local government. It was a very federal government. You learned the three branches, and that's what you did. And so I think really implementing a more local government focus in civic education starting as early as elementary school, because I know for me personally, in our infrastructure management class, we went on tours to recycling plants, wastewater plants, and I had the time of my life, which you don't really think about those kind of things, but I thought it was so fun. And it also shows that there's more to local government than just the city manager, the mayor, the city council. There are so many jobs that you can do in local government that just help out so much, and to show that those careers are open and available to kids who may not want to, go to school, because school's not for everyone. I know that sometimes, like even in high school, I struggled a lot, and I really didn't think that school was for me, but I found what I loved, and here we are. So I think that having that early education and showing that this is what city council does, there's so many things that you can kind of go through and explain. And I think that if we revolutionize civic education, that we'd have a lot more engagement as people get older and as, they kind of get to the voting age. So that's just my kind of, my 2 cents. I love civic education, and I find it so important.
Yeah, my dad's a retired city manager, and he would always talk to students in schools when I was growing up about that disconnect between what you learn, right? So you learn the federalist system and federal government and state government, you often, but if your trash doesn't get picked up, if you turn on the faucet and the water doesn't turn on, if your dog, gets loose and becomes lost, you get a parking ticket, like you don't call the federal government. All of those things that are part of your daily lives, or you don't call the state government. If you do, I guess they're not going to know what to do with you, but that's not the level of government that touches people's everyday lives, and not the levels of government that one can most closely influence outcomes for, right? And so it's kind of an interesting disconnect between what we're taught and what, yes, of course that's important, but actually getting all the way down to the county or city or township or whatever kind of level, because those are the folks and those are the services that people most closely kind of need to thrive. So even if it's, after school homework help at a park or library, those are the kinds of things that are taught kind of through that civic education that you talk about, that would be super beneficial, just to have people understand, like, what does a city do for you? It's all the things that you take for granted and that you don't see often.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I that's what I find it so interesting. And my sister's a elementary school teacher, and I've spoken with her, and she's like, I was like, can I come in and like have like a local government like thing, like please, like this would be my dream, like can I come and speak about local government? And she said yes, so hopefully I can set some time up with her. But I love my sister, she's fabulous. But it's like so wonderful to kind of like have that impact. And I think with me being younger, it kind of works in my favor that I can make it fun. I am gonna go make a TikTok of me fixing a pothole, which I actually kind of want to do now. It sounds really fun. Like, I feel like there's like I can go to like home, like Menards, and go get, I don't know what it's called, but I'm gonna start filling potholes.
There you go.
I'm inspired.
Jill, what's your big idea to boost Gen Z
when we were
participation?
talking, I was so enamored with Emma's about civic education, because I agree. I mean, when I was in high school, so I took a civic class, but I learned about the federal government. And so then, going to college and I didn't even realize that when I was living on Mass Street or Tennessee Street in undergrad in Lawrence, Kansas, that, if no one picks up my trash, who do I call? I call the city. And so it was just stuff like that where a lot of the things that occurred to me, I was like in awe about how much the city plays in our daily life. And also, I think it's noted to talk about, public servants as well, with like police officers and firefighters. And when I was in high school, I did have an incident where, the EMTs and police officers had to come to my house, and, just kind of seeing the way that they interacted with my family and understanding just, they put their lives at risk every day too. And I think that that's one thing I am so appreciative of. And I think that would be a wonderful way to implement policy to, start people young and really appreciate those that serve the public.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, our silent heroes. I thought I was in my brain. I was like, wow, that's really good. Let's write that down. But it's so true.
Heroes, yes.
That'll be your next article.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you're in it, you don't really like see the pure gravity of what every little thing goes on to make sure a city runs to its highest efficiency. It's really quite beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so civic education, maybe doing some policy with that, or kind of like a shadow me day. I feel like that would be, I would have loved to shadow a city administrator or city manager when I was younger. I think that would have been so cool.
I was talking to my boss about, giving kids like city council roles and giving them a topic and having them not argue. I don't like to use that word, but to have them have that civil conversation and show that conversations when we disagree can be civil. Mm-hmm. And also it's kind of fun. Like, what should we have for lunch? Like something silly that kind of shows them that healthy debate, but also shows them that like government's fun, and sitting in those fancy chairs is super fun, and getting to have people watch you is super fun. So I think there's a lot of ways you can make it interesting.
And sparking conversation is so important the younger you are. So I 100% agree.
Yeah. We just did a thing with a couple, both high school students, and a different event with some college students from Cal State Long Beach in the last couple of weeks, where we did like the mock city council meeting, and they were like, this is so cool. Somebody got to be the mayor, somebody got to be the city council, right? Somebody got to be the city manager, the city clerk. We had pros and cons, or for and against, in the audience. Like, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And just on my side to like see all of that, and to see the gears kind of turning for the students at the different levels of like, oh, this is what happens. And it was really fun to watch, and a really neat thing to kind of put on because they seem to get so much out of it.
And it kind of gives that vibe of like a mock trial, where like you can kind of put on this persona and just have fun with it. Ugh, I just love local government.
Well, you both are just like oozing with the local government love, and that is so like on brand for ELGL. So I'm so excited that you were both on the podcast today.
Oh,
awesome. Well, so we're at our last question here. No pressure, but if you could have one song as the Gov Love DJ, what song would you pick as the exit music for this episode?
Take it away, Emma.
I would have to go, or I guess we would have to go, Pocket Full of Sunshine. I think, as you can tell, me and her are both very bubbly, and me and Jill get along so well, and so I think it kind of embodies even our friendship, where we're both just very loving and caring to each other, and so I think Pocket Full of Sunshine would be our choice.
I love that. Good choice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that ends our Gov Love episode today. A big thanks to Emma and Jill for joining the podcast. Ladies, it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Subscribe to Gov Love on your favorite podcast app. New episodes drop every Friday. If you are already subscribed to Gov Love, go tell a friend or colleague about this podcast, or share on social media. Help us spread the word that Gov Love is the go-to place for local government stories. GovLove is brought to you by ELGO, Engaging Local Government Leaders. The best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGO member. You can reach us online at elgl.org/GovLove or at GovLove Podcast on LinkedIn, Instagram, and other social media platforms. Thanks for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.